Hey everybody, welcome back to the Quest for the Bestest. It's the podcast for Backlot Banter where we review every single Best Picture nominee in random order, or sort of random order, as we have been doing for a couple of years. We've been working on the Palme d'Ors, and now, today, we're here to talk about the second part of a film we talked about a couple years ago because it also got nominated for Best Picture. Of course, that would be Denis Villeneuve's Dune Part 2 from last year, 2024, starring many people you might have heard of, including Timothée Chalamet, Zendaya, Rebecca Ferguson, Javier Bardem. I mean, we've even got Austin Butler and Dave Bautista, Florence Pugh, Lea Seydoux. This movie, star-studded to the max. This movie's CGI'd out to the max. This movie is desert-powered out to the max. I am very curious to hear what you guys have to think about this one, compare it to the other one, also in Best Picture conversation. So we're going to dive in to that very quickly here. But first, let me remind you of what we talked about last time, because we did Nickel Boys, the film based off the Colson Whitehead book, and we thought that that was a rather excellent film and rather uniquely artistic. And so I highly recommend going and watching that review because it got a 9.4 out of 10, beating The Brutalist for spot number 1. So Nickel Boys is at the top of our 2025 Best Picture ranked, our Best Picture nominees ranked. But today we will be adding Dune Part 2 somewhere on that list. I don't know where we'll go. I think it's a toss-up. We shall see. This is going to be a fun one. But first, our last thing to do, Abram, you have a comment from one video over the last little while to have us chew on.
I do. We got a lot of really insightful comments on our review of Emilia Perez. And I want to read one out here from our friend Abby, who said following: haven't watched Emilia Perez and likely won't unless it wins Best Picture, which it probably won't with the Carla Sofia Gascon controversy. But there is something to be said for flashy cinematography, incompetent cinematic storytelling with controversial and problematic narrative. I really dislike to despise directors like Gaspar. Is it Noé or no?
I think it's no. Gaspar no.
Yeah, no. That's what I say whenever someone wants me to watch one of his movies. No.
Very good, Abram. Very good.
Quentin Tarantino and Rob Zombie, not because I think they're bad or incompetent directors. I actually think they're great directors with good understanding of filmic language. But the problem comes in when you ask what their movies stand for. I inherently disagree and find distasteful the ideas and philosophies they approach in movies from. When they are good directors, I find that it just makes my dislike for the movie stronger, because they're able to translate their philosophies to screen and argue their points so well. I can't just sit back and, quote unquote, just appreciate what I'm watching, because at its very core, I disagree with the thesis and themes of the story and film I'm watching. Maybe applicable to the conversation towards the end of the review. And I think it is. I think that Abby does a good job summing up, I think, why we felt it was so important to have a super thoughtful discussion about the film, what it does right and what it does wrong. We got a lot of other comments too. So a general thank you to everybody who, in really good faith, engaged with a tricky episode of the show. So
We didn't get any weird comments, to be honest. Which is awesome.
It also is interesting because we recorded that before the tweet dredging, the great dredging of tweets.
We did.
And it was just fascinating.
Whole nother conversation to have.
Exactly.
Who PR agents of other movies are digging through the tweets of actors to find stuff to bring up. It seems like a lot of that's happening this year, but. Yeah, we got it before.
Quest where we will rank the PR teams of various movie studios.
Yeah,
it's coming right now. I saw a tweet today. It's like every PR firm is on vacation right now, and after that GQ interview with Michael B. Jordan,
So we've been getting quite a few of those in recent weeks, I should say.
Alrighty, let's talk about this film. Tanner, it was a long time since this one came out in theaters. Will you do the audience a little favor and remind them what happens in the second part of this Dune appears to be trilogy now? This third one is yet to come out, but the second one, what happens in this Dune Part 2?
Dune Part 2. We pick up immediately where we left off in the first installation of this series, and that is Paul Atreides, his father murdered, his house scorned, turned to dust by the evil and vile Harkonnens, is out in the desert with the Fremen people, the native Fremen people of the planet Arrakis, okay? He and his mother, Lady Jessica, are there. They are slowly getting ingratiated into the culture of a local Fremen tribe. Paul, now spurned on by what has happened to his father, knowing that the Emperor is behind it in all the evil acts, wants to with the Fremen's help, gain control of the very important spice fields of Arrakis, and use that to levy control of the planet of Arrakis, and basically bring about a revolution on that planet, freeing it from the Empire's control, from the Harkonnens' control, and giving the Fremen people back the power to control the flow of spice, and bring about a green paradise as well. But this is all complicated, of course, by the fact that his mother, I should say, belonging to the Bene Gesserit, has sort of installed this belief in the Fremen people, at least some of them, that Paul is a messianic figure. The not the Kwisatz Haderach, that's a different title that he has. He is the Mahdi, that's what he is. A messiah figure who will bring about a great paradise to the planet of Arrakis. That is where we start. I won't do the entire film because a lot goes down, but that's where we are now in the story.
It's also kind of a longer movie, and so
Yes.
a lot happens in this one. Who wants to start? I think I want to give this one to Abram, resident Villeneuve head over here. Abram,
Yes.
what do you have to say about Dune Part 2? What do you think of it?
Yeah, I mean, I'll keep it brief. This was my 5th time watching it. As I said in the end of the last episode, I have my poster from the preview showing we went to framed. So it's no surprise that I love this movie. It actually is, I think, with more time and reflection, my favorite film ever. And I was in the shower thinking about it, and trying to, as I often do, thinking about it in the shower. I'm trying to really boil down and distill why. And a lot of it is the cast, which I love, features many of my favorite actors. It's also the general science fiction and fantasy. But I think moreover what it is that speaks to me so deeply about Dune is the way that we have this big, complex narrative, but it feels so elegantly told, because I think that there's a sense of great trust between all the performers and all of the crew. Everybody involved in this film are given a limited time to portray their portion of this saga. And through that, I think they make the most of every moment. To me, every film is intentional. Every choice is made for a reason. But I feel like in Dune Part 2, there's a heightened sense of that. The way that elements of pieces from the score are repurposed as they take on different emotional meaning. The way that the astounding cinematography does a lot of the storytelling. Villeneuve very famously once said that if he could make a movie without dialogue, he would. He's a visual director, and I think that comes through so clearly. To me, this is an efficient movie, and I think that efficiency lets us just sort of revel in the scale of the story and the technical achievement that is Dune. I love every dimension of it, and I think the reason that it's so important to me is that I feel like every time I watch it, I find something new, and I think that speaks to the fact that not just the script firing at the highest level for me or the cinematography, it's every element, and in that interplay, I think that there's a lot to learn about the characters and a lot said that isn't literally said that makes this kind of simpler retelling of this complex story really nuanced and really rich.
Tucker, what did you think?
I don't like Dune, but I do really like Dune Part 2. I think this is a remarkable film. I echo most of the things that you said, Abram, though for me, it comes really down to how surprisingly personal I think this movie feels in the journey of Paul Atreides, who was really caught up in a lot of stuff in the first film that I think it felt a little bit more broad. But in Dune Part 2, I think the struggle that Paul goes through of is he a messiah? Should he lean into that? Should he not? Does he believe in it? Does he not? Does any insert X character name, do they believe it or not? That internal struggle and that pressure that it puts upon him is so unique that it ends up feeling very, very engrossing to me. And that on top of all the interesting themes of religion and leadership and things, I think are really fascinating. And I think the supporting cast is really well balanced. And I think that the action sequences are way more dynamic and visually interesting than the first one. And also, I think the main reason why I find this film so much more engaging is how much we focus on Fremen culture. That I think is maybe the biggest strength of this movie is how unique the Fremen are and how fascinating I find learning about their way of life, their beliefs, the strategies that they have to survive, their political affiliations, their history. I think it's all really, really compelling. I mean, so I really love Dune Part 2. And even after just seeing this film for the first time, I was already locked into like all the character names and the terminology. And like there's all sorts of nonsense in this movie. Paul Atreides has like 17 different names that people call him. It's comedic almost, but I can name all of them. And for the most part, I can be like, this is where they come from. But it's because I think this film does a really good job balancing all of its ridiculous sci-fi concepts with a surprisingly grounded personal story of the struggle that Paul Atreides is going through. And so I really love Dune Part 2.
Tanner,
jump
absolutely. Right in. You want to go next?
It's blockbuster filmmaking operating at the highest degree that also has a very good mind about executing upon the interests of Frank Herbert, the original author of Dune, who conceived of this world and its intricacies and the pushes and pulls of the political intrigue. Denis Villeneuve is a very good steward of all of that, while also, knowing what to highlight and what to maybe cast aside to streamline the storytelling of this second part. I won't go too much further because I think we all are in agreement, so we can talk about this movie in specifics more so than opening thoughts. But what I do want to do, because Tucker mentioned it, is go through quickly the nicknames that Paul has, because I also find it very entertaining. So he is Paul Usul Muad'Dib Atreides, the Duke of Arrakis, the Kwisatz Haderach, the Mahdi,
Lisan al-Gaib.
Lisan al-Gaib is the one I was trying to pull. Thank you. Yes.
And Muad'Dib, which I don't think you said.
No, I said his Fremen name, of course, is Paul Muad'Dib Usul Atreides. So Paul Usul Muad'Dib Atreides?
Doesn't matter. They all mean the same thing.
Part of his Fremen name.
Oh, that's a good point. But he is the Duke of Arrakis after all. But Timo, what do you think of Dune Part 2?
I mean, I'm going to echo a lot of what you guys say. I really like this thing. I mean, the technical filmmaking here is outstanding. We've got incredible visual effects, incredible sound design, incredible score. I think Abram really highlights the cast very well. We have a great amount of star actors who are really given a lot to work with and who are themselves very good. And because we've gotten to know them for a movie prior, we are now in a kind of situation where we really just kind of get to, clean up and take a home run right now with just the performances that have developed and the ways that our characters manifest as the film goes on. And like Tucker said, I like that this, not really like inversion, but the new development of what the central conflict is in this one is a much more personal one. It is a dramatically ironic one, too, that Villeneuve likes to play with our knowledge of the character's belief in the prophecy or the knowledge that it is just a construct, and the way that is then, quite cleverly used to move the plot forward and to develop a number of our characters. And so, yeah, I think that this is like a really fun movie to watch. It's got banger scene after banger scene, like watching it. I watched it on the airplane with a couple friends. Admittedly, not a great way to watch a movie like this. It has much better sound and much better picture than my little crappy plane screen would allow.
I mean, I think all of us had to watch this at home, which is already, as we all know, like driving a speedboat in a bathtub.
But
watching it on a plane is like driving a speedboat in like a sink.
Basically, I am glad that I got to see. I'm glad I got to see it in theater already, though.
Yeah.
So here's what I want to note to sort of get us deeper into the conversation: is this is obviously a part 2. But what's interesting to me about Dune Part 1 and Part 2 in conversation is that I think that you can really see an evolution or at least a change in Villeneuve's craft. And it goes back to what you were saying, Tucker, this notion of it feeling more personal. That's interesting for him. I mean, he's often a very cold filmmaker. He's interested in scale. He's interested in distance. I think to a movie even like Enemy, one of his earlier films with Jake Gyllenhaal, that's a very psychological film, but it is pretty cold nonetheless. Mm-hmm. But I think about the warmth in this movie, and it comes from performance, but I also think it comes from writing, when you think about Dune Part One, if Dune Part Two is a wordless film, Dune Part One's as close to making a silent film as Villeneuve is ever going to be allowed. There's a lot of ambiance talking in Part One, and obviously it's the case with Part Two as well. But we have more space in the narrative for a character like Stilgar, played by Javier Bardem, to be irreverent and be fanatical and be funny.
Mhm.
And I think that these are adjectives that I certainly wouldn't ascribe to most of his catalog. So I think that also looking at this in conversation with Dune Part One and the larger body of Villeneuve's work, it demonstrates an ability to hold two things in concert, which is the scale and it is the more clinical, awe-inspiring magnitude of the
Yeah.
science fiction, but also this beating heart at the center of the narrative that gives characters time to be close to the camera and be close to each
Oh,
other.
definitely.
And I
Yeah.
think that that's something
Mhm.
that elevates his filmmaking, and I think broadens the appeal of it as well. I think that
Definitely.
Dune Part One is a much pricklier movie in some ways than Part Two is.
I think that an important thematic idea that this film likes to deal with is love. That does not show up, think about what's going on in Blade Runner 2049. I don't think that movie really has a lot to it has somewhat to say about love, but the romantic relationship between Paul and Chani is, I think, at the forefront of this film, and especially as we get toward as we race towards the climax of the movie, it becomes very obvious that this is important to Villeneuve as like a central idea of this narrative as a whole, as the book that Frank Herbert wrote is very concerned with the love of these characters, and yet the necessities of power, and Paul's quest to achieve ultimate space power, desert power. He has to forego the love that he feels deep inside him, which, given the kind of not so truthful nature of the prophecy that Paul is at the center of, the something that really is true in this story is the love that he feels and that he expresses. And so I appreciate the way that Villeneuve likes to put these little shots and these glances between Paul and Chani, between Chalamet and Zendaya, that those two actors have incredible chemistry, and we are allowed to see this relationship begin and flourish and go through a bunch of different stages. And it feels just very natural. It feels youthful. And then I think it adds just a really nice personal character to this grand story, that then the grand story is also happening, and we actually get to see how love matters to other characters too. I think that this is maybe the big development in Dune Part 2 that makes it less prickly. It makes it easier to watch and easier to be brought in with the characters.
Well, absolutely. And I want to tie in that character point that I think we all agree on, but obviously I mentioned that personality being one of the main reasons I like this movie so much, but I also want to match that with, again, where this movie opens, the exploration of Fremen culture. And I really like that those two strengths, that I think we would all agree are strengths, are very closely tied together for that first 30, 40 minutes of the movie. What we ostensibly get is the new kid showing up at high school, and everyone else is kind of making fun of him because he doesn't quite get the culture yet. For the first 40 minutes of this movie, as he's trying to learn how to deal with the worms and how to sandwalk and what the different machines do, and don't upset the balance between the non-believers and the believers. Like, there's all this stuff that he's not aware of. And Chani and her friends, who we don't really get to know, but the supporting younger Fremen characters, they are cliquey. They have this like jokey thing. They treat the older believers like boomers and stuff. Like, there's this really surprisingly natural and mirroring of our own culture dynamic in Fremen culture that I think allows us as young American, just where we like have fun, we like to joke around people.
Young American nincompoops.
Nincompoops, yeah. To be invited into a culture that is totally alien to our own. Because we see part of ourselves and part of what we've experienced in all of us going through high school and college in this group of warriors that live in the desert on this planet where there's giant worms. But it feels human. It feels personable because the characters are making jokes. They're making fun of one another. They have inside jokes. And that's the reason I was able to be sucked in right away. Is not only do I find Fremen culture interesting, but I'm finding Fremen culture interesting and being taught about it through the lens of a more accepting and relatively lighthearted introduction to this group of characters, which I think is really, really important.
I mean, yeah, the youthful energy of this film is, I think, what has endeared so many people to it, especially the letterboxed generation of cinephiles, of film lovers. And this is obviously a fantastic like blockbuster ensemble vehicle for the new class of movie stars. Your Timothy Chalamet, Zendaya, Florence Pugh,
Yeah.
Austin Butler. Like you couldn't assemble
Anya Taylor-Joy, kind of.
Anya Taylor-Joy, kind of like you couldn't assemble more of a perfect like
Yeah.
quadruple hit of like, well, who are the new hot movie stars, and they're all freaking incredible in this movie, by the way. I want to talk about Timothy Chalamet and Zendaya, Paul and Chani. Their relationship
Good
is
old
what
PNC.
I noted them as Timmy and Z in my notes
Timmy and
here.
Z.
Timmy and Z. And they're like flirty, meet cute, almost high school romance, since Tucker invoked that, is what anchors the first third of the film, I want to say. And like when you're getting these sweeping montages of them sitting on top of the dunes, and then she's explaining to him how the moisture like nets work, or whatever they're called. But she's explaining that, and then like her dialogue sort of fades out as he's just kind of looking at her. It's like, this is classic like romance movie stuff that is being employed in high sci-fi. That Denis Villeneuve knows how to employ those tropes, and also knows how to capture the faces of his two young stars here that are that to be so engrossing. Like the stuff about I wrote down some of their lines because they are so charismatic with one another. They're magnetic the way that they speak to each other. About Zendaya saying like, maybe one day you can be part of the Fremen, or when she's teaching him how to do the sand walk, and he says, well, actually, the hologram books that I read, and he shuts her up. She shuts him up just with a look and everything.
Yeah,
like, it's so good. And it comes straight out of like a textbook for a completely different kind of movie.
I think that, well, so I have a big bias in favor of Timothy Chalamet, who's also probably my favorite actor. So
Sure.
let's be clear about that as well, that's my bias. But I think he does a really exceptional job here, because he has, I think, the hardest job in the film, which is to sell Paul's confusion and eventual assertion of himself as the Messiah. And I think that throughout the film, you see the way in which this tortures him. And a moment I love early on, Tanner, you mentioned it, when they're sitting on the dunes together. He's being rebuked by Chani, who's saying that he comes from a place of dukes, but everybody here, men and women on Arrakis, are equal. And Paul says to her, I'd very much like to be equal to you. And I think that it's a beautiful line, and it's a expertly delivered moment from him, because I think it not only has this romantic depth to it, but I also think it has this earnestness that sells this notion as the film is progressing, as he starts to see a narrow way through. I think you feel hurt as Chani does, as he takes that path, because Chani is as important a character to the narrative as Paul. And I think a key way that this is executed comes back to score. I think about this love theme that plays, which is sort of the new big motif in Dune Part 2's score. And we hear it early on in the film with these beautiful moments between Chani and Paul. But then we start to hear it over their military triumphs. And then we start to hear it over more brutal conflict. And then by the end of the film, we're hearing it as she has been betrayed by Paul. And moreover, the score is swelling as Stilgar is boarding ships with the Fremen to carry out a holy war. And so I think that the score is working with the performances to subtly take a relationship we understand and love in the first part of the film, as we're talking about, and shift it into something darker and mutated. And something that's being done under the guise of love.
Yeah.
I think it's really beautiful work. I think it's almost on par with like Anakin's turn in
almost.
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 Christ. And that great thematic analysis where you mixed in music and theme. Oh, Star Wars.
Let's talk about Paul's sort of the heavy crown, the glorious purpose that he is burdened with in this film. He becomes aware of the expectation, or like this assumption from the Fremen people, that he is a messiah figure in the first film. This is the product of course, Bene Gesserit propaganda that has been enacted on this planet for decades, centuries, etc. But it really starts to weigh on him here, of course, as he becomes engrossed in the culture. And we don't really draw attention to it a lot, but there's like shots where it's after the scene where he rides the giant sandworm, where like Lady Jessica's coming down the hallway, and we're doing a wide shot, and there is a cave like painting of a figure riding a giant sandworm. You're like, the idea of this messiah figure is so key, and Denis Villeneuve does a lot of work to sort of clue you into how important, the size to which, the extent to which it is important for the Fremen people, at least a large sect of them. Tucker already mentioned the younger people who don't believe so much in this prophecy. They believe it is meant to keep the people complacent, waiting for their messiah to arrive. But then also, what happens when, oh shit, the guy that they've been saying will arrive for so long appears to be here? How long can you keep denying it? And it is also, of course, Lady Jessica's whole subplot in the movie. She reiterates this multiple times, that like they have to convert the non-believers, start with the weak ones. And she is quickly turning the tables and extending their power to the south to get them on the side and everything like that. The religious messiah figure aspect of this film is so fascinating.
Yeah, and I think because it is a religious theme, it's wading into territory that a lot of films these days like kind of aren't really all that interested in going. And so we have the idea of faith and belief and non-believers, and I think that that's reflected most excellently in Javier Bardem's Stilgar, who gets to, like you guys said, be funny and display his adherence to the faith throughout a number of times throughout the film, and kind of rebuke the characters who don't believe, and his kind of like unabashed faith in this prophecy feels like a great propulsive thing that is kind of dragging us forward in a uncontrollable way, in a way that Paul sees as, not within his control, that he is either going to accept it. And I think that this is a theme that the film kind of deals with in Fremen culture. You either accept the culture, you work to become one of them, or you die. And for Paul's transformation, it's you either accept the transformation into the Messiah figure, into the leader of a holy war, or you are killed by the desert, the Harkonnens, the soldiers, the Sardaukar. Yeah. So this kind of the forcing of all the characters' hands in a number of different realms leads us into this one step after another that Paul and Lady Jessica find. He finds the narrow path,
the narrow way through,
and I think it's just really satisfying plot and character work. It's just like really, like, you really just see all the angles. You see why this is the only way that could happen, and you see the characters thinking through their plans. I appreciate a movie that like allows us to let characters have time to talk about what they think they should do, or the different paths that they could take, and then taking the one that seems most fitting to the character that has been established, and then actually getting to see it executed. That's a lot of films will cut one or two of those elements out and just let us either see the result or see the planning. But Villeneuve lets us see all three aspects, and that's real cool. And I don't think hampers the pace of the film at all. We want to see the machinations and the results of everything in this world. It's just the world is just so interesting, and the sci-fi and the world building is so thoroughly done through non-script means. Basically, like, we're not using the script to tell people about the Spacing Guild, and we're not using these kind of heavy economical measures within the film.
Yeah, the
to
stuff that
get
Herbert
across like
really
lore.
really harps in on in the novel, where he's like, all right, so this is the Spacing Guild's deal, and this is like the interplay between the Spacing Guild and the Empire and the houses, and these sort of like checks and balances of power that exist across the universe. And he forgoes a lot of that, but also like gives you he distills it down to the cool shit is what's most important to him. And I know, of course, Tima or Abram being a prequels fan, I'm sure would love to hear about the trade talk and the policies and etc. embargoes and whatnot. But that's not something that Denny necessarily has time for in this film, especially because
was that what Dune Prophecy is about? What's the show?
Tucker, you spoiled it. When we talked about the Bene Gesserit, I was going to go into a prolonged joke of, if only there was some sort of other form of media where we got to see the past dealings of the Bene Gesserit and how this came to pass on Arrakis. But no.
Apparently
anyway.
It's really bad. I didn't watch it.
Yeah, then someone was going to bring it up and say, oh, and also good is what I was looking for.
Yeah, the biggest problem with Dune Part 2 is that there's no real good Poggle the Lesser analog. That's really a really important character from Star Wars I miss here. But I like this point you're raising, Timo, because I think that on this fifth watch, I was really thinking about, does this film plant seeds that Paul is an antagonist from the beginning of the narrative, or will grow to become an antagonist? And something I was really clued into this time is the pressure exerted by Stilgar, by Lady Jessica, and by Josh Brolin's character, who I'm blanking on because now I have to say it.
Gurney Halleck.
Thank you.
His still suit is full of piss, by the way.
It is, as he's playing his sitar or whatever it is. This to
yeah,
me goes back.
I don't know.
It goes back to my point from the very beginning about the efficiency of the storytelling, because we have Lady Jessica as this very heavy-handed religious figure who's like, we're here to convert the non-believers. It's in the text and narrative. As
she is the Reverend Mother of the.
She's Reverend Mother,
of the Bene Gesserit.
But we have in Stilgar this interesting relationship.
Well, no, she's the Reverend
Chani.
Mother of the Northern Fremen.
Sorry, the planet.
Yeah.
She's the Reverend Mother of the.
There are many
planet.
Reverend Mothers.
Yeah.
But then Stilgar is this funny
I have reverence
guy
for many mothers.
He's also a real religious zealot. He's willing to die for the prophecy, and he says to Paul after Siege Tabor is attacked, and Paul is reiterating that he doesn't believe in his position as the Mahdi. Stilgar says, I don't care what you believe, I believe. And he's this interesting figure that obviously we know that Paul looks up to in a way. These three people that he looks up to in this void of his father's death, obviously his mother, his Stilgar, and then Gurney Halleck, they're all exerting a pressure on him.
Yeah.
And it's malevolent to various degrees. I think Gurney Halleck is secretly a big key in understanding Paul's turn.
Yeah. His inclusion, his re-injection back into the narrative is so well done, because it's at a point where Paul is well on his way to becoming, fully Fremen, fully the leader of these people. And then he gets this basically crashing back into the narrative, a reminder of his old life, a reminder of of his old title. That when
not only that, but the only possible surviving fragment of his own old life.
Yeah.
Because everyone else of House Atreides is dead, as we've seen. Mr. Austin Butler killed the last few, but also because his mother has become basically Fremen by that point.
Yeah.
She's like lost all the semblance of what she was as the female leader kind of House Atreides. I like that you key in on he's basically lost all touchstones to Atreides, and then Gurney Halleck's like, you know what? We got bombs.
Young pup.
We got the nukes, baby.
You young pup. You young pup.
I love that moment.
Because you think back to the first movie and like the events that have transpired before that, and like your knowledge of the general sci-fi fantasy storytelling. As much as Paul looks up to his father and has key scenes with him, you have this extrapolation that you can sort of figure out that like Gurney and
Duncan, Idaho
were other like stand-in father figures for Paul while Duke Leto was away dealing with official business, etc., etc. And so, yeah, he is effectively like a pseudo Duke Leto Atreides coming back into Paul's life, and keys into so acutely what we were poking fun at, making jokes at the expense of all the titles that he has. But the reason that he reasserts that he is the Duke of Atreides, this title that his father held, that he is going to reclaim, that he slips the signet ring back on and sends an official message to the Emperor. It is a reclamation of that part of his life, while also grabbing the reins of a much bigger, grander, and more dangerous title of the Lisan al-Gaib.
Mm-hmm.
He says he's the Duke of Arrakis in what is one of my favorite scenes, period. I think that when Chalamet arrives to the High Council,
dude,
he's cooking.
Storms in. What a scene!
Best scene in the movie? Yeah,
he's cooking.
One of the best scenes of the
hard.
year, man.
His performance as he is, it's not even that he's shouting; it's that he fills up the room, and this is why I think the film plays so nicely with this sense of scale and this sense of personal drive, because we often pull the camera way out as we do in Dune, and we see how many people are in there. We see how many people draw crysknives on him when he is taking over the floor as he shouldn't be. But the booming voice of Timothée Chalamet as he stands in this ray of light and puts back on after taking off and spending a lot of the movie without his father's ducal signet, that back on, and he goes to individual people in the crowd and says,
when he walks up to that fucking guy and he's like, you could be the one, you could kill me right now, this is it, this is your moment, but you're not going to. You know why? Because I know shit about your fucking grandma, buddy. She was here when this fucking planet wasn't under Harkonnen control. That's what I'm gonna fucking do, baby. I've been fighting them for centuries.
Yeah, he goes to them, and it's this incredibly personal moment of, I know that 9 moons ago, your grandmother was struck in the face with a rock. Back when this planet had a Fremen name, Dune. Or he turns to the older man who starts immediately falls to his knees in rapture when he goes, I know that you have nightmares of giving water to the thirsty,
the dead.
Yeah, this is why I think Timothée Chalamet getting nominated for Bob Dylan over Paul Atreides is horseshit. Because I think the real sense of weight that he can bring to a sequence like that, in the way that he can transform himself, not just from the earnest figure and Fedaykin warrior we see him as earlier in part 1, but from the scrawny boy that Duncan Idaho makes fun of in the first 20 minutes of Dune Part 1. That arc that Timothée Chalamet travels, to me, is outstanding. It is a defining performance, and that scene is just illustrative to me of exactly how good he is.
It really helps. I think the production timeline and the production delays of these two movies extremely benefit Timothée Chalamet, because by simple virtue of being like 2 years older, he gains a little bit of a different face. He's got a little bit of a different build in his, physical body. That all of that contributes to the all that extra weight his character puts on his shoulders. I just wanted to quickly note that I think Timothy's pure age and maturation as an actor over just a small amount of time really helps his ability to come across as a powerful and an in-command figure in exactly the opposite way he is a boyish and unsure of himself character in part 1.
This is
also costuming.
Yes, we will talk. I want to get into the costumes on this movie. My lord.
It's exactly the reason why after we walked out of seeing this movie for the first time almost a year ago, I was like, as much as I want to see part 3, I kind of wanted to leave it for 5 years and wait for everybody to age up a little bit more to make it really feel like time has passed and these people have are far different than we saw even from the end of part 2. But also we're getting that movie in Christmas 2026, so I'm also happy about that.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point of his just maturation as an actor, because I feel completely differently about Paul Atreides as an interesting character in this film, and frankly, Timothy Chalamet as a performer in this film than I did with Dune. No, yeah, no signifier.
2021, Dune.
Yeah, I guess
2021.
Yeah, because one of my major criticisms of that film is I didn't think that Timothy Chalamet filled that role particularly well, and I still feel that way. I mean, I've rewatched that movie since I've seen Dune Part Two, but I don't remember, and I criticized the film for this when we did our Best Picture Quest review of that movie 3 years ago. That his performance not hitting for me was a big reason why I didn't find that film particularly engaging, because I didn't think he was a particularly interesting main character. But he's in such a different, more emotionally complex situation in Dune Part 2, and I think he's matured so much as an actor that you're able to get these commanding sequences that we all like nod our head in agreement are some of the best scenes of like last year's films, because everything is hitting at the same time. You get these moments of production design and costuming and cinematography and lighting and acting and like sound design all matching together to create something that gives you cinematic goosebumps as you're watching it. And that's what Dune Part 2 is for me, is not only the subtle moments of character interaction, but when those character interaction moments balloon out to a massive scale and you feel the weight of generations of prophecy and ongoing holy wars and political intrigue and all of this stuff sitting on top of a single conversation. It creates a really unique sense of pressure to each interaction between characters, and especially in the religious sense, Timo, as you were mentioning, they cover all the different aspects of the progression of the messianic narrative, I guess. But we also are able to get all the different kinds of perspectives on the messianic figure, and that's what I think again keeps this wide scope film feeling very thematically focused, because ostensibly this is really just the Messiah story. And there's a bunch of different characters, but most of the way that they interact with people is in some way leading back to how do they feel about that particular element of the film. The romance, which is a plot line of this movie, is also tied to how is that complicated by the Messiah thing. His mother's story and the fact that their relationship definitely starts to fray and splinter, chip and shatter as the movie goes on, is impacted by the way that she feels about the Messiah story. Gurney Halleck returning is this one like moment or scene or two of them reuniting, but then is totally complicated by the fact that Paul is becoming the Messiah.
He largely serves to be like, hey, you know what would really help you in your fucking holy revolution of the planet is some fucking nuclear bombs. How's that
93 motherfucking nuclear bombs.
The family atomics, as they were. Look, you're absolutely right. And
Buddy, I got the family atomics.
Yeah. All of it is the movie is of course in large part about that. But there is one part of the film where we really divert from Paul's story directly. And that is, of course, when we jump to following Florence Pugh as Princess Irulan, a Bene Gesserit student following the top dog Reverend Mother, the Reverend Mother. What are you pointing?
Yeah, it was really weird.
I'm waiting for you to say his name so I can.
Yeah.
No, he's just gonna talk about that storyline.
Oh, you're talking about a totally different one. Oh man.
Well, that goes into, of course, the plot line, the reveal of Austin Butler as Fade Routha. There you go.
See, now that fits a lot more, because what Aaron and I saw is you making that face when he was talking about Florence Pugh. It's like, dude, calm down. What the hell? But when you're talking about,
I didn't see Timo pulling a face. I didn't see Timo pulling a face. Sorry.
I was pulling quite a Fade Routha face.
Okay, sounds good. But no, I mean those storylines are intertwined, and we really have to think about like who is in power, in control of the movie, the power system that must be upset by Paul, sort of putting on this holy war. And you follow the chain of power, you follow the money, folks. And who's at the very end of the chain? It's the fucking Bene Gesserit. It's the fucking the space nuns, okay?
It's the Reverend Mother Helen Gaius Mohayim.
That's right. Their plans are measured in centuries. Okay, they have plans within plans within plans.
They
They're
don't need hope.
reassurances.
They got plans.
I think about plans within plans probably once every 4 hours.
That's right.
I love
And
that concept.
The plans within plans that they have set forth are, of course, tied directly back into the nephew of Baron Harkonnen, Na Baron Feyd-Rautha.
Baron.
I mean, I said that Timmy was cooking, and he's cooking, but Austin Butler is cooking like with a greasy ass spatula.
He's
and
got
like a fryer
the
that
wok
hasn't been
and the
washed.
stir fry.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's completely transformed in this, and you have to think back to early 2024 when this guy was just like, oh, the guy who played Elvis. Like literally, that was it. And his star power has greatly sort of changed in just a few months, in a year's time. But like,
he's the bike rider.
Now he's the bike rider, of course.
No one saw that movie.
But no, I mean, obviously the makeup job on Austin Butler is fantastic, and he gets to do this complete sicko role. Okay, that is so incredibly fun to watch.
Oh my god, it must have been fun for him to play too.
Yeah. I don't know. What do you guys make of Feyd-Rautha, or like this complete diversion we take? The only time we're like not on Arrakis for the entire film.
I think it is a real smart move because it's both like a breath of fresh air from. It's not stale what we're dealing with, but it's like it pulls us out, it pulls us away, but it gives us this inverse, right? We know about the plans, we know about that. Yeah, maybe things don't work out how the Bene Gesserit want on Arrakis, but it matters not. We got our other guy over here to like keep going with the plan. Well, let's learn about
mother of New Jersey.
Yeah. Let's learn about the other guy. Let's see what he's like.
This is the guy doing over there.
And I think it's really important that we see a very big distinction between the kind of Bene Gesserit results coming to fruit in Paul and the Bene Gesserit results coming to fruit in Feyd, because Feyd's fucking crazy. Like, he's actually insane, and Villeneuve is doing a lot of visual storytelling to help us see that. I think that it's hilarious how blatant Villeneuve is with his like vagina imagery surrounding Feyd-Rautha. Like, that he's coming in and out of these things, and you're like,
these the giant
what does that look
doors
like?
that he enters into the arena with. Yeah,
like. And just like, okay, stuff like that sets up how we think about the character, but then it's reinforced when we've got Lea Seydoux coming in and actually kind of talking directly to camera about what he's like. The contrast in morals and means that we're seeing between our two, eventually in the film, it's like quite clearly like, okay, we got to set up the other guy because these two dudes they're gonna have to fight. To see how they are different is, I think, really important to understanding why Paul is going to be successful.
Yeah, I think that the relationship more broadly between the Atreides and the Harkonnen, told visually, is really quite astounding. A key example I think of that really makes the film, to me, excellent in this one small detail is that when we begin the film, we're watching the Harkonnen burn the bodies of the Atreides after the Battle of Arrakeen. But then at the end of the film, we see the reclamation of Arrakeen by the Atreides, and we see them then burn the bodies of the Harkonnen. The relationship between these houses and the fact that they are, in many ways, operating in the same position is reflected beautifully in the characters of Feyd and Paul. But I think even beyond the sort of thematic analysis, I just think that the look of Gady Prime is just so insane. I just don't.
One of the
so
most genius strokes of like, how do we design a sci-fi world? It's like, well, how about one that's like told in film negative?
Of course, it does take cues from the beautiful show that Palpatine and Anakin go to in Coruscant.
Of course, naturally, as we all know.
But otherwise, I think that when you look at this amazing architecture and the almost reverse fireworks, but moreover, the sound design on Gady Prime is just unbelievable. We hear this chant of Feyd-Rautha's name, but it's this real deep, like garbling, distorted sound, and it's it's menacing, but it's also like it's kind of icky feeling. It's like a bodily noise.
Yeah.
And I think that the point you make about the imagery, the sexual imagery, is very key here. This very Freudian character of Fade.
Yeah,
is,
it's like an opposite Oedipus. He killed his mother, and he smooches the Baron, of course, which is his uncle, not his father, but
which, by the way, is a testament to how in it Austin Butler was, because he wasn't supposed to kiss him back.
Yeah.
That was like
that is
in the moment.
Oh my god, that's such a funny scene to watch nowadays, though, because I've seen that
the
gif where like he goes in and then he turns and he looks right at the camera. It's so
I see the one where they kiss and
funny.
it says "Hop on Concord." That
Yeah,
doesn't
Hop
mean
on
anything to any of
Concord.
our viewers, but I just think that it's a testament to me to what I was saying at the very beginning of the review, the efficiency of everything here.
Mhm.
The imagery setting up this deep sexual vulnerability in the character. These conversations with Margot Fenring, Lea Seydoux' character, it's not subtle in the script, but there's a lot of subtlety happening in the filmmaking elsewhere, and I think it results in a layered experience. And then you have a performer like Butler, who frankly doesn't have that much time.
No.
Yeah.
But I think nails every moment he's in and every cutaway shot he has. I think about at the end of the film when Paul uses the voice and you see like a thrill in his eyes.
Oh, this guy's something. This guy's got something cooking. He loves pain. He's so enraptured by this figure of Paul, because I don't think he's in the movie, but Timo, as a book reader, as a Dune book reader,
It's been a while since I read the book.
The
But
only
yeah.
one we know.
I believe it is in the lore that, of course, in the first movie, it is established that Lady Jessica was supposed to have a girl, as most Bene Gesserit are supposed to, but she didn't, and Paul was supposed to be a girl in the Bene Gesserit plan, and was eventually supposed to marry Fade Routha, and so they have this very fraught relationship that in the original book, that narrative that is then flipped as they are both embodying this masculine, violent ideal.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about costuming,
that seems
actually,
right.
because that obviously brings into conversation Florence Pugh's character,
Yep.
who is forced to marry Paul Atreides, and this is a observation I'm stealing from Twitter, but it's a great one. So whoever said it, I'm sorry. God, David Ehrlich, maybe, I don't remember.
Just decide.
The progression of Florence Pugh's costuming is so key. Again, not particularly subtle, but every time you see her, she is more and more obscured. You go from her having this simple crown,
Yep, just a
to then
little...
her cheeks are covered and her whole head is covered by this almost like balaclava type
It's like a
sleeve.
koi.
like chainmail sort of thing, and then by the end of the film,
then
she has like cage lines across her face.
She's a Hellraiser character.
Yeah, honestly.
That's a sort of subtle costuming work that I think is astounding.
Cenobite.
It's
Just want to say I know the
There you
brand.
go. There you go.
I'm not a fake fan.
it's the same as when I was mentioning Paul earlier. They make simple changes, like Paul gets a second cape that's bigger that obscures his eyes. Like they take these costumes and they iterate on them over and over and over again, sort of as we hit a new narrative or emotional beat. And those are the sorts of that's like the lattice of small production design decisions that, to me, again, simplify things. You can visually look and see where these characters are.
Yeah.
I think that's really, really key, and that's
Arrakis.
truly fundamental blockbuster filmmaking. If you go back to like the 70s,
You can't do
Star
it with
Wars.
small budgets. It requires a lot of money to have characters change their costumes 6-7 times throughout a movie.
Well, and not only change their costumes, but change into all sorts of costumes that look like each one cost like $700 to make.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
I really think that it's almost cartoonish, the costume design in this movie, where most of the costumes in the last film were either Fremen or the like political figures that are kind of just wearing like crisp suits in some way. Especially Oscar Isaac's character, he's always in those really crisp suits.
High collar.
We get some
medals.
really insane costumes in
yeah.
this movie, and I think no more is that obvious than in the whatever those demon characters are that are behind Fade Routha in the arena are just these dark looming figures with these giant horns that go off, and I'm like, that's like a Bloodborne demon. Like, what is going on here? Like, they really And also
And
to
the movie's
the,
the movie's like, fuck you, no, I will not
who
answer
cares? I
what's
don't know.
going on here.
Yeah.
You just look at it and it's cool.
They're
Yeah.
like they're just like the arena guard, and also they're gone. Okay, we're moving on.
But I think the commitment to, I say cartoonist, and I don't mean that as an insult, but really ridiculously creative costume design helps to make the world feel even more alien and makes these cultures feel even farther apart. I also think to the costuming of Lady Jessica as she becomes more and more entrenched in her goals to be not only the Reverend Mother, but the Reverend Mother of all of these Fremen, and drill the point home farther. Her costuming and her tattoos and makeup design become more and more garbled and look crazy and complicated. Like she becomes a Dan Flashes shirt. I mean, the design is so complex.
Yeah.
There's
very good, very good.
And I'm also starting to realize, also because I keep bringing up Star Wars, what I'm realizing, and obviously Dune was a critical influence on George Lucas, but what was I saying?
I don't know.
There's a parallel. What's great about Star Wars is everything, but in a more particular way. When you go back to like the original 1977 film, part of the allure was that you arrived in a place like the Mos Eisley Cantina, and everything was just there. Because in the world of Tatooine, this is just the culture of it. This is not an explained element for the sake of the viewer. It is simply a world we step into.
Yeah.
And I think you're giving a great example here with the guards in the arena on Gaiety Prime, because they invite questions and they make me wonder and they make me want to know more about the universe. And I think about the tech in the film also. I think it does a similar thing.
Oh, sure.
If we go to the early portion of the film, the first major scene here, as there is a Sardaukar ambush on the Fremen who are trying to still carry Jamis's body back to Sietch Tabra, there's this amazing wide shot where the Sardaukar are flying up the side of a mountain because we put a thumper down to call a worm. Yeah. And just wordlessly, they lift off the ground. It's so eerie and it's so different from how you might imagine a jetpack or propulsion.
There's no rocket boots. There's no like whoosh behind them of force. There's just a lift.
And the shot I really, really love in this early scene is that we got the Sardaukar to the top of the mountain, and then we have the thumper far down in the dune, and we are down close to the thumper. We're looking all the way out in the background of the Sardaukar on the hill, and they fire their light rifle. It's like a hit stun weapon in a video game. Immediately and silently, the thumper is just missed.
Yeah.
Or the gun on the ornithopter when Chani and Paul are trying to shoot down.
It has this like amazing like machine gun, and yet it's the rhythm of it is different, and we got the VFX and the sound design are like totally collaborating.
It's insane because it's like this big circle of just everything is a bullet there, and it's like brr. I'm like, how does it? I don't.
And there's like this moment. There's like this. It's you see it hit, and there's like a beat of silence, and then you hear the gun go off.
Yeah.
We really play with sound and visuals, and we revel in how interesting the both sometimes high tech and sometimes very analog world of Dune is. And I think that by not getting bogged down in it, even less in the first film, because in the first film we get the paracompass, and we sit around and be like, oh, what's the paracompass do? Here in part 2, you simply live in the world, and you're in awe of and scared of this technology that the Emperor is bringing to Arrakis. It's just really good genre storytelling.
Yeah.
My favorite technological moment in the movie is a moment when they deliver Jamis's body to the Fremen that are to deal with that, and they enter him in some like MRE sack, and it sucks out all his juices, and then they one by one fill up these like old fashioned like vacuum thing, like air pump,
like sort of honeycomb container bags or something.
Yeah. And then they gently pour it into the Lake of Souls or whatever it's called. That sequence is very. It's surprisingly like serene. It's one of the few serene moments in the film, of a moment of reverence for the culture that they provided. Exactly, the rituals that the Fremen have, and that is on top of many moments. But I think that is really the scene where I clued in one of my favorite films of this, one of my favorite things about this film being the Fremen culture and how interesting it is to learn about, because watching that sequence against also through the eyes of Lady Jessica, who's there for the first time and is not familiar with this, and getting it explained to us by Javier Bardem, we get to see what this process is like. And then again, it sets up this really historical pressure to each of these things of as Jessica looks out to this underground lake and comes to the realization that every single one of these like 38 quintillion deciliters or whatever he says of water is someone's body juices, and they would never drink from this even if they were about to die of thirst, and then that all ties back in again to the themes of the prophecy and the messianic story of that they keep this water for when the planet is going to be revitalized by the Lisan al-Gaib, and water and green life are to be brought back to Arrakis. And in just those few moments of dialogue, and I think there's like a few flashes of maybe like the Green Paradise or whatever, it sets up all of this religious imagery. You understand the history of why they're doing this, why in each of these moments where they're like, don't give your water to the planet, like why the pressure is put on them to like have such a strict culture about this. And then it forward projects of the future of like, they're doing all this for the coming of their Messiah. And it's just like, I really love that it's the technology and the religion and the history and the culture and the acting all in this one moment that makes me ask so many questions about all of this.
Well, and this is a positive note for Frank Herbert more than any of, I think, the filmmakers, but like just the fact that it's water and it's a desert. It just makes a lot of sense. You just are like naturally very worried about this as a human. And so for them to then have such an emphasis on water and retention of it and the creation of it is like, you're like, yeah, that is how it should be in the desert where the planet wants to kill you.
Yeah.
There's a moment I really like in the movie. It's after Siege Tabor has been attacked, and we're watching actually the building cave in on that reservoir.
Oh man, you feel that so. Oh my god,
it's all good because Stilgar says there are many of them across the planet, so it's all good. Which is a line I didn't catch the first 2 times I watched the movie, but when he's telling Lady Jessica, he's like, "Oh yeah, there's a lot of these across the planet actually." I was like, "Oh yeah."
No. But
this one doesn't matter.
It's fine.
There's a moment when Fade arrives and he's got Chani's friend. She stayed behind, and she's been beaten in combat. We know that she's killed 9 Sardaukar, but now she's beaten and going to be killed. And Fade kills her with a flamethrower. And there's this cut that's so good that this half a second alone makes me hate the Academy for not nominating it for Best Editing.
Okay, here we go.
Because we cut to everybody riding south to war, and the sound of the flamethrower becomes the sound of the worm.
Yeah,
as we were riding south, it's this moment of real propulsion as the vestiges of everything we knew of.
The guy in the sound design room when he came up with that was like,
yeah, it's outstanding.
Mark Mangini.
It's just really good. I just like that moment a lot. I just made me think of it when you're talking about the reservoir and what happened after that.
Well, just that character, I mean, this is kind of this goes back to our messianic theme, but the number of times we're shown in the film, especially after Paul rides the worm, which is a big turning point in him becoming Fremen and being accepted, when we see characters like go out and completely throw their life away for him. They're like, for Mahdi. And then like, there's that one character who's fighting with
the Beast Raban.
With Raban on the Ornithopter. And he's he gets the final throw.
I love it. Dave Bautista is such a of course has been almost typecast as like the big burly scary guy. But and so when you utilize
this
him
one,
to be
he's
like,
the big
God,
burly.
fuck.
He's the big burly scary guy who's also a bumbling idiot.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
so in that moment, I think we really elevate the fear, big theme here in Dune. The fearlessness of the Atreides versus
mind killer, right?
Yes, the fear like centric mindset of the Harkonnen, and Bautista's character is the one that I think displays that, is the one that like is constantly showing that like this shit like makes him scared.
Yeah.
Like the threat of Mahdi, of the Muad'Dib, is like terrifying to him. And then when he sees the lengths that the Fatican fighters will go and then tell him as they are dying that this is for the Mahdi, that really puts the fear of God or whatever into Raban.
The fear of the Lisan al-Gaib.
The fear of the Lisan al-Gaib. It really heightens this religious fervor that the film surrounds in, because we see the effects on the other side. We don't just see how our main characters and our protagonists are coming to grapple with the rise of a messiah, but also what does that mean for the people on the receiving end of this holy war?
I mean, that's like the stroke of genius in Dune as a text, as it existed from like in like the 60s or whenever Herbert wrote it. Is that like is his interpolation of like guerrilla tactics and terrorism, and folding that in with like religion and like a religious monarchy or a theocracy essentially, and like the dangers therein, but how magnetic a figure like that can be to so many people, especially people who have been subjected to decades upon decades of subjugation. And that's what makes the whole text in all of its interpretations, good or bad or whatever, to work so well. Like that is something that you have to be able to execute upon to get and convey Dune, and then he does get that, and so he does convey it so well. I mean, the scene where it comes together is a scene right before Lady Jessica heads for the southern hemisphere of Arrakis, and it's the scene between her and Paul where we just get, I mean, you get banger line after banger line where you get the shouting of "That's not hope.
That's not hope.
That's not hope." You get the I believe when she's like, "Why do you continually sort of reject the fact that you are the Lisan al-Gaib? You are destined to be the Kwisatz Haderach in the Bene Gesserit prophecy." And he's like, "What I believe is that I matter to these people. Like he is so good-hearted and good-natured, but like having to merge further and further with the prophecy that will again, just snowball into the billions and billions of bodies, the famines across the universe. He has to get edge closer and closer to that to seek out the right thing for the people of Arrakis." And that scene is fantastic for all those reasons. And every step of the way, every scene in this movie is him wanting to back away and like find a narrow way through where he can maybe save the people of Arrakis and give back to them what is theirs, but also not become, seek holy war across the entire universe. But then he drinks the water of life and becomes a Kwisatz Haderach, and he's like, "Damn, I guess I'm doing this shit. Here we go."
Well, he finds a narrow way through after he drinks. And that's what's interesting.
I don't mean like the narrow way through as it exists in the movie. I meant just as a turn of phrase.
No, 100%. But it's an interesting idea to take literally as well, because I think that the politics of Dune are very interesting here. This very like archetypal revolutionary violence that the Fremen are participating in for their emancipation is made very complicated by the way that it becomes co-opted. Again, co-opted by the figures we were discussing before, a figure like Gurney Halleck, or the knowledge that Paul, as the Messiah, his narrow way through. Again, just very good, solid, quick storytelling. We see the knife, in Fade's chest. We know, and it's clear on rewatches that Paul knows that he has to get stabbed really bad.
The
to kill
quick
Fade.
shot that we get after he says narrow way through is the knife in his chest, or his side rather, I guess. Yeah, you said Fade, but that's okay. Yeah, whatever.
Or sorry. Yes, no, you're right.
You good.
No.
Well, they both get stabbed very quickly.
I think it is his blade in Fade's chest.
I think it's his. I
Because
think
you
it's
don't
Fade's
see
blade
that. You never see him
Paul's.
get stabbed. You don't see him get stabbed.
Oh, that's a good point. That's a good point, actually.
He
Yeah,
gets
you're
stabbed
right.
from
You're
a
right.
reverse.
Yeah.
And what was I saying? Here's what I was saying. I was saying that this revolutionary, like Fanonian violence, Frantz Fanon revolutionary violence that we're saying that participate in, the way it's co-opted, and the way that Paul, his narrow way through, leads to the Holy War. He says he's seen all these futures, and this is the future that he's participating in. It's when he's playing out. This sort of fanaticism becoming an opportunity for him to become, as the Harkonnen were themselves, a real fascistic populist figure
Yeah.
is
Mm-hmm.
really, I think it's
To take-
complicated. It's
To
not a
take
simple
complete
thematic
control
message.
of the universe is kind of
Yeah.
the end goal of any of these factions. They want power and they want control.
I think it's
And the
also
Bene
worth,
Gesserit do that via breeding and via plans within plans. And Paul Atreides is going to do it with the use of the Fremen, being better fighters than the Sardaukar, and the
Mhm.
Harkonnens were going to try to do it using the control of spice and chom and the spacing guild. And it's like there's the levers of power are so varied in Dune, but we with Paul see the fanaticism and the populism, and this film is, I think, quite clear in that the ends are not really all either that different or that good for the actual individual people.
Yeah.
Might be a little better for the Fremen, but those are not the only people in this galaxy, in this universe, and Villeneuve lets us know that that's the case.
Worth noting, of course, we've brought it up a couple times, like how Paul is like motivated against the Harkonnens. But there's a key line towards the end of the movie where he learns after he drank the water of life that he is a Harkonnen. His mother was the daughter of Baron Harkonnen, and he's like, I wrote down the exact line. Hang on. We'll survive by being Harkonnens. We will survive by following their same ruthless mindset that got them to the power where they are.
Yeah.
And also, I love the note that we end Stellan Skarsgård as the Baron as he like flails and like crawls, in vain up the stairs. He sees the throne. He's like, the thing I've wanted all along. There it is. Like he seeks it out, even though that it would mean nothing.
Yeah. There's other moments in that scene that I just really love. Again, simply because they're well executed moments, like the Sardaukar marching in formation into the entryway as Paul and the fundamentalist troops are walking up, and then you never hear the battle, you never see the battle, you simply see covered in blood Paul and the fundamentalists walk through the door. Like Villeneuve is so good at using visuals both to imply and to further themes and character arcs, but he's also just so good at using them to just make cool shit happen.
Dude.
Yeah.
And I think that's the two sides
he
of
loves the
Dune.
rule of cool.
Yeah.
I wrote down what the scene where because we get the final battle, of course, all packed into like the last 35 minutes ish. And there's the one part where we kind of jump across to where Gurney is seeking revenge on Raban, and I just wrote down that Gurney is aura farming as he like walks up the stairs with the explosions behind him. He's got like streams of blood coming down from his eyebrow. Dude, it's the fucking cool. There is so much of like you're watching this movie for 2 hours and 2 hours and 45 minutes. You're like, that's the coolest shit I've ever seen right there. The scale of seeing the fucking giant grandfather Shai Hulud on the horizon, and all the Fremen are like, holy shit, not one that big. Oh my
They're
god.
like, oh fuck, Paul's done. Or like we set up that atomic bombs are the most powerful weapon in this universe, and I'm like, yeah, okay, I know what an atomic bomb looks
get
like.
it.
Like, yeah, it's like I get it. Okay. Oh, what a Chekhov's gun, right? And then we get to see the three of them fly past me, like, oh fuck, here it goes, and it's like that final battle is just like, it's another example of how I love how we see plans. We see the plans get thought of, the initial idea. We see the new information that allows the plan to happen. Oh shit, we've got the nukes. Oh, we can alter the geography. Oh, that the enemies think that this is the way that it is because it's always been like this, but we can change the status quo in a way that is for our benefit in this little battle. Now we'll bring in the worms and we'll bring in the other. We'll have all the different ways that our forces are going to attack, and that it's detailed in the film, but it isn't overdone. And then we get to see it happen. We cut around between the different groups, and we get to see just competency porn. We get to see badassery happening in front of us. People, popping out of the sand, and cool, like a really cool choreography. Just the fighting technique of the Fadakin is improved upon and shown through very many different battles in this film. and we don't cut around. It's no Jason Bourne trilogy style. Like we're just like getting to watch the choreography happen.
Yeah.
I love it.
Well, I think what's interesting about the action sequences in this movie is that most of them involve the Fedaykin warriors using their techniques of hiding in the sand and their different weapons and stuff like that. They never lose one single time in this movie, other than the fact that the place that they've been living gets blown up, but that's not really a battle. They're like that's
just an all-out assault. They're not able to like combat in any way.
But attack every from the ground, as Stilgar laments.
Yeah, exactly. But every time they go into battle in this movie, they win quite handily.
They clean up shop.
And it's really interesting because I think it helps the film to feel like it has better forward propulsion, because to be honest, I don't feel like there's a lot of stakes in the battles, and I don't mean that as an insult, because I just like no, they're gonna do this. Like the Harkonnens or the Spice Farmers or whoever these are attacking are not as skilled, do not know the ways of the desert as well as they do.
They don't harness the desert
They're
power.
going to win. They're going to win, and that's just that. And it isn't until the final knife on knife battle between Feyd-Rautha and Paul Atreides that I feel like it's much tighter. This is a much like closer fight. And the fact that Paul gets stabbed, and also the fact that is then brought down to a 1v1, like basically audio design only battle of this like really snappy hand-to-hand combat and this really like sharp audio design. I think it's a really fascinating thematic choice to have most of the battles in this film be like kind of easy for our protagonist, but it ends in a way where the weight definitely feels. But I don't know. I never had heard that brought up before. But do you guys agree with me? Like,
I think it's interesting.
They win so easily.
I'll break it down here, because how many like Harkonnen soldiers versus Fedaykin battles do we get?
Versus
yes.
Fedaykin.
We get the first one with Paul and Chani sort of taking out that harvester, with the bazooka kill and everything, which is another one of those like coolest shit I've ever seen. It's only been 15 minutes since the last coolest shit I've ever seen.
Well, it's actually it's only 30 seconds between the coolest shit in that scene, because first she shoots the Sardaukar point blank and then yells reload.
Yeah, exactly.
And then when they slip it through the shield on the ornithopter the second time.
Which is, I think that first battle is meant to be,
and it's romantic too.
And it's quite romantic as well. Look at our two cute little gorilla fighters. That is meant to be like Paul and Chani and the whole unit of the Fremen are working together. Like it's clicking. We can make it work. The second one is the second one when we meet Gurney Halleck, or is there one in between?
No, there's one in between, because we see. I love this shot. We cut to, and it says in the bottom corner, it says Spice Refinery.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And then it just
blows
up. And then we cut to the pandemonium in the Harkonnen headquarters.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. That's when
and
Raban's
there's also
like,
the one
rats, hairy rats.
There's also the one where they attack.
No, that's different.
Raban. No, I know. I'm saying it's a different one.
No, because there's two. Because what you're talking about is that it's early on after the harvester scene, when he's he's pissed off at his underlings because they can't kill them. But then in that scene, he yells, "Today Muad'Dib dies."
Oh yeah.
And then you arrive in the heavy sandstorm, and Muad'Dib just starts walking towards him.
And that's the second one.
One of the Sardaukar shoots the other one.
Yeah. And that's when
they're so panicked.
That's the scene where we see like Raban and the Harkonnens are fucking afraid of these people. Sorry, Tucker, continue.
And fear is the mind killer.
No, but I don't know. I like the action sequences in this movie. There's really not much of the point.
Yeah.
Though we do have to wrap this up.
We do have to wrap it up.
Unfortunately, we have to give our final thoughts and
hang on. Do I have any
scores here?
Do I have any final notes? The romance stuff and what we opened up this conversation talking about, the last thing basically being, one of the final things being just Paul, Chani, and Irulan left standing. And technically off to the side, Jessica's also left standing. She doesn't really kneel yet either. But like, you only see Paul, Chani, Princess Irulan, and you're like, this is the fucking setup right here. This is what it's all been about.
Yeah. Well, that last scene, Paul's use of the voice in it is just incredible.
Yeah.
It's just like, you just set up this thing. It's so well sound designed. We get it set up in the first movie, and then we end up with it here, and it's just the expression of Paul's power, basically, and I love it. Yeah, that the moment where Christopher Walken Christopher Walken's in this fucking movie. We didn't even talk about him at all.
Yeah.
When he's forced to kiss the ring and just like
So
that little, it's just like, yeah, get down on your
fuck that
knees. Yeah,
guy.
kiss it. Yeah, kiss it. Kiss it.
And also the film closes on Chani, which is another good choice from Denis.
Hey,
Because
really
this
expands
movie
upon-
might or might not really be about Chani.
Yes, well, she is.
I
It
think-
is about her being spurned and left aside by this prophecy, sort of rolling up both her people and the man that she had feelings for and everything. Her hopes, her dreams for the planet are all sort of snowballed up together and then rolled away from her. She doesn't want to be on that train in the first place, but she is spurned by the fact that everything that she cared about was taken advantage of in some greater plot for power that will ultimately lead to universal destruction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the suffering of billions.
My only other final note, because I think I've said most stuff I want to say, is I love that the black screen with Power Over Spice, Power Over All hits before the Warner Brothers logo.
Also happened in the first movie. You remember what the first movie message is?
No, but I should literally be killed on camera for not remembering.
Dreams are messages from the deep.
Oh,
No, that's what Nicole Kidman says before any movie.
Oh,
names.
sorry, my mistake. Except it doesn't sound like that. It sounds like "Whoa, do it now,
All right, let me pull up a score
Let's
sheet
do it.
here.
Let's give it a score.
I
Tanner,
don't think
would
I really
you
need to.
would you run the nominees for
yes,
us?
of
Would you let
course.
us
Yes,
know
of course, Timo.
what this
Yes,
one
of
is up
course.
for potential awards?
Yes, of course.
Well, the for sure awards
course.
that is nominated for are, of course,
course.
Best Picture. That's why we're talking about it here today. It is also nominated for Best Cinematography, Best Production Design, Best Visual Effects, Best Sound Design, or Best Sound, I guess the award.
It better
technically
win.
just is.
It better win sound. It better win sound.
Mhm.
It should have been up for editing, and it's also criminal that it's not for direction.
Yeah,
That's
well,
just criminal.
It'll really come down to whether the Academy decides to celebrate Dune Messiah in a couple of years, which I'm very excited for. I cannot wait to see
Yeah.
how Denis pulls off Paul as the fucking villain of the story now.
I could
Yeah.
take it or leave it.
Oh, okay, fair point.
We'll see. I mean,
I might see
the
it.
book
We'll
is
see
the
when it
book
comes to
is
Max.
I might not. Yeah, I might
the
not
book
catch
is
that
kind of
one.
hated. The book is it's pendulum, man. Some people
Okay.
love it and some people despise it. And
Sure.
so whereas the first one
Of
is a
course,
lot
that's
more
the worst kind of
universally
art.
loved, we'll see what he does. But I mean, if we can get a kind of a Return of the King situation, I feel like this one is a bit of that, where we had the first one and then the second one really just comes in and
Yeah. Well, it's a matter
completes
of
it
it's a
for
matter
us.
of the Academy has short-term memory issues where or I guess long-term memory issues because they don't remember this movie
Yeah.
came out almost a year ago. But next one's Christmas, so we should be good anyway.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true. That's
Yeah,
going to leave
yeah.
a great taste in the mouth of
Mhm.
voters because it'll still be in theaters when voting happens,
That's
when
right.
the nominees happen.
As long as it's good.
Mhm.
He just
Okay.
he just has to make the best movie ever made a third time. Can he do it?
Well, we'll see. We'll probably still be reviewing it, so
will.
yeah, stick around. Let's hit a score. Let's find out what this one gets. 3, 2, 1.
Beep, 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 beep.
You already knew my score, though.
Oh, boy. Well, that's, I mean,
Ooh,
we
look
saw
at
that one
this.
coming. 9.6. That's going to go at spot number 1. Number 1.
Wow.
Above Nickel Boys by
Guys,
0.2
wow.
points.
If this wins Best Picture, it would be our second. Oh no, I guess that's our Palme d'Or ranking. But it would be
yeah.
probably really high on the Best Picture as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah.
I knew it would be up there, but I didn't think it would take the number one spot. That's damn impressive.
Here's the point breakdown. I gave it a 9.0. Tucker gave it a 9.5. Tanner gave it a 9.7. And Abram gave it a 10.0. So,
Of course, had
Yeah.
to do it.
The white
course,
boy
had to
Dune
do it.
agenda
Yeah.
will not be silenced.
That Dune Agenda, that picture is maybe my favorite picture ever. I want that on a
the
t-shirt.
orangutan. Yeah. Why is it an orangutan? Who's to really say?
Dune Agenda.
Uh-huh.
What are you talking
okay.
The orangutan
Tanner-
on the
about? Oh, I've
sand
never
dune?
seen that before.
Yes, Timo. Yes, Timo. What's your question?
What film are we going to review next episode?
Next time,
Oh, so
Timo,
next-
we are traveling away from the far off planets of Arrakis and Gaiety Prime, and we are centering ourselves right back here on the planet Earth in the 1970s for the film I'm Still Here. Brazilian
To the
film.
far-off land of Brazil.
That's right. The similarly sort of crippled by authoritarian regimes. Of course, that's what this film is about. Telling I believe a true story of some political events that went down there not too long ago. But this is a film that stars, of course, Fernanda Torres and her mother, Fernanda Montenegro. It is historic in many regards. We'll talk about it and our feelings on the film soon.
With a special guest, which is very, very,
That's
very
true.
exciting.
Well,
Yes.
no spoilers, but there will be a special guest.
We've hired an expert.
Bolsonaro, former president of Brazil, Jair Bolsonaro, will be
Christ.
on that episode.
Welcome to Quest, ladies and gentlemen.
Welcome to Quest. No, it will not be disgraced former president Jair Bolsonaro.
Oh, only
Well,
we
I'm
can
already
only hope.
disappointed.
Yeah.
I am looking forward to watching that one. I'm here looking forward to hearing your thoughts. I thank you guys for an excellent discussion on Dune Part 2. So much fun to rewatch this. I mean, just I was watching with my buddies there on the plane. We were just like, I would just turn and be like, oh, this scene is great. Oh my God, I can't wait to see what
Coolest shit you've
comes
ever
up in
seen
this one.
every
It's like,
15 minutes.
just
I was saying that to myself.
Yeah.
just coolest shit you've ever seen. So, well, keep sticking around watching Backlot Banter. We've got more cool shit coming up for you as well. Might not reach the heights of Dune, but we try to get close.
Yeah.
You know, I'm still here up next. Rest of the nominees shortly after. We're going to get them all before the ceremony. That's right.
Locked in.
And, well, you know what I always say. Stay cool, keep warm. Peace.